Well, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate the time that you've spent to come together for a common cause, a common purpose, which is really meant to help out our fellow brothers and sisters in our own community. Something that I've found very, very important in my own life, and I want to share that with you today. But I will say, I've got this card, and it went through some of these things that are actually in the annual report that you have. And I thought about this, and it was really nice, succinct numbers about how many people were helped, how each program was helping each individual. It gave you a very nice, succinct way of seeing what was happening in your own community. And this is what I would call the what of the Salvation Army. What is it that we're doing, right? You look at the annual report, and you see the what of what's going on. And that's very, very critical, because the what, the reporting, right, is really a diagnostic. How effective are you at impacting your community? How effective are your collective efforts, right, at impacting those at the most need, right? And so from that perspective, very, very, very important. And, one thing that I really appreciate about something like this, or even the annual report, is as an attorney, it's actually easy to understand and digest. Because when I start seeing numbers, I went to law school, let's just face it, I went to law school. It didn't require the GMAT, which was a real help. I'm not a number cruncher, which is an odd thing because I ended up as a banker. So, the irony is rich. But the one thing that I like about the annual report is it doesn't talk about things in terms of basis points, right? It just puts down the numbers, and I think that's easy to digest. But the what is important because of the who, right? The what is important because of the who. And that is what is absolutely critical. Salvation Army has always targeted those that are the most in need. And that may differ from community to community, right? We've always tailored our services to address the needs of a particular community. Who is the least among us? Let's target them. Who are the most in need? Let's target them. We could care less whether they belong to a different race, a different creed, a different way of life. That doesn't matter to anybody in this room. All that we care about is that they are at a point of need, a critical juncture in their lives, and we have the means to help them. We have the means to deliver services to them very, very effectively, and with a smile and a warm embrace. Absolutely critical. So I would say, and I would suggest, that the proposition that we've all bought into, right, is that each of us carries a transcendent value. Every person in our community has a transcendent value that supersedes their circumstances, right? It doesn't really matter how they got to where they got to. It matters that they are there. That's what counts. And then recognizing that our individual and our collective acts of kindness, whether they be background programmatic or frontline dealing with the people, they are still acts of kindness, and that those acts of kindness are transformative. Absolutely transformative. Transformative to the individuals that you're helping, transformative to you as you give of yourselves, of your time and your treasure, but transformative, more importantly, to the community, and the ripple effect can be felt in their families, to the community, to the state, to the country, and around the world. I absolutely believe that. And I know that. Because when we talk about helping others, I'm the other. I am the other. I've been on the receiving end of your acts of kindness. And I can speak definitively to the transformative impact. My family can, my community can, my corporation can. So for me, it's not just about do-gooder sort of terminology, right? That we sometimes can hear and we just feel like, oh, we're going through the do-gooders, kind of sappy emotionalism. No, this is serious stuff. And it's really impacting human beings in a way that is so profound. It exceeds what you could possibly even dream of. And it has in my own life. I come from a broken home. I was raised in Fresno. And I've shared this before, but I was raised literally had a junkyard as my front yard. It was literally a junkyard of old cars, broken down cars. We had, it looked like a toxic waste dump next to us because the oil refinery cans that they used were getting processed, the paint was getting burned off. It was just a commercial, industrial mess, right? All around me, and that's where I was raised. I was raised in poverty, in a broken home, in a mobile home in Fresno. And I can tell you now, my father is, and I don't share this often because it's deeply personal to me, but I think it's important for you to understand how impactful what you're doing really is and how it actually reaches people beyond and takes them out of their circumstances and puts them on a different trajectory. And I've got a father serving life in prison. I literally have every odd against me. I dropped out of school when I was in 10th grade. I moved out on my own when I was 16 years old. By the age of 14, I was an alcoholic, and by the age of 16, I was a methamphetamine addict. I literally had everything against me. I have burned any bridge that you can possibly imagine. I had burned it. And I ended up in a situation, uneducated. I didn't have a silver spoon, a tin spoon, a plastic spoon. There was no spoon, right? And I had nothing. Nothing. All I had was a heavy-duty addiction and no support whatsoever. And I was living out of my car in Northern California, in Placerville, living out of my car. And I had been in trouble time and time again, right? Small, stupid stuff, public intoxication, just dumb stuff. But I knew where I was headed. I knew I was headed for death or prison. That's where everybody around me was going, right? I could see it. I was smart enough to understand the reality of my situation, and I didn't care anymore. I didn't care. I had no hope because I felt that I had no value, that no one cared. And if they didn't care, why should I care? And it was at that point, at that critical point, where I had lost all hope in life and was even suicidal, that there was one organization that didn't care about me or about my circumstances, or the history that I had had, all the baggage that I came with, the fact that I was strung out, that I weighed 125 pounds, I had hair down to here, right? They didn't care. They only saw a human being in need. And that was the Salvation Army. I had no other avenues available to me. I had no money. I had no place to live. I had no connections. I had nothing. The only organization that would take me in was the Salvation Army. They fed me. They clothed me because I had no clothes. They gave me a place to sleep. They gave me counseling. But more important was the 1,000 transformative acts of kindness that I saw within the first week of entering there. Something that, it was like rain to the desert. And because I was so jaded and cynical, I kept waiting for the angle. What's the angle here? And I finally realized there was no angle. The angle was love. The angle was my health. The angle was me. Let me tell you, the what is absolutely critical. There has to be doors open. There has to be food on the plate. There has to be employees behind things. There's got to be somebody to clean the place. All that stuff is absolutely critical. It's the nuts and bolts. You don't cover the nuts and bolts, you don't have a program. But what you do and the vision that you cast, and when you collectively come together, when you're focused on the other, when you're focused on me, the people out there at that point of need, the transformative acts of kindness bespeak the fact that these people have value. That's what you've done, right? That's what you've done. With time and treasure, you said they have value. And if they have value, there is hope. That's where hope comes in. And hope, when it comes in, is dangerous. It shocks the cynical world. It defies the odds. And it bespeaks miracles. That's what hope does. And I can tell you, for my case, I came in, I did the 6-month program in 1994, right? I started, when I graduated from the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center, I went back to college. Now, I had only had a 10th grade education, and I had done a lot of drugs in between that time and did a lot of drugs in high school. I wasn't exactly paying attention. When I started back at community college, I literally could not write my first paper. I did it all in all caps because I forgot when to capitalize the first letter of my sentence, and I was ashamed of it. I was embarrassed, and so I thought, if I put all the caps lock on, right, and everything's done in capitalizations, and they'll hide the fact that I don't know when to capitalize a noun or a person or I just couldn't. I was trying to hide the fact, and I got in trouble, and I came clean to my English teacher in community college. I came clean and I told her, here's my background, here's where I'm coming from, I'm really struggling. And she came to me and she said, you write your paper and just write it as best you can. You may get an F, you may get a D. Don't get discouraged. What we're going to do is I'm going to tell you all the things that you did wrong, and you can keep returning it, and returning it until it becomes an A. And that's what I did. Transformative acts of kindness. I mean, literally, you can't do history, you can't do psych, you can't do anything if you can't write a paper. But I graduated, my undergraduate at Asbury College was a 3.85 GPA. You see what I'm saying? It's a transformative act of kindness. Transformative. The Salvation Army, do you think they just left me on my own at that point? No. I've got scholarships from the Salvation Army. And I got student loans from the Salvation Army. From the Salvation Army, interest-free student loans. Now let me show you something. This is me in 1994, 2 months before I entered into a Salvation Army program. I don't know if you can see that well. Are you going to invest in that guy? Are you going to invest in that guy? Because the Salvation Army did. Because you did do it. If this guy were a stock, you'd short it. Right? I know that. Right? I work in the financial services industry. I'd short this guy. But the Salvation Army invested in him. They invested in me in time and treasure. And it's the only reason I'm here today. I know it for a fact. It's the only reason I'm here today. When I got out of undergrad, like I said, hope is dangerous. I said, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to go to law school. And my mom was, even my own mother was, well, honey, you've done well. You've done well. Because they're nervous of me failing, right? They don't want me to have to endure failure at this point because I had done so well up to this point. I've been clean, I've been off drugs. We don't want any setbacks, right? And I understand that. It's okay. I understand that. But I said no. I know I lived out of my car. I know I didn't graduate high school. I know I'm in recovery from methamphetamine and from alcohol. But why can't I have that? Why? Do I not deserve to be able to reach for the best? Do I not deserve to be able to have the highest and best expectation? To be able to realize the potential that God gave me? Just because of my rough circumstances? No, I've been trained better than that. I know better than that. And how did I know better than that? Is because the Salvation Army, every step along the way, told me better than that. Told me better than that. And I got into UC Davis School of Law and graduated there. And something interesting started happening. This is the Salvation Army recycles lives. It recycles lives. It takes what other people consider refuse, or we ourselves consider refuse, and says, no, we're going to recycle it. And they recycle lives. But the interesting thing about that cycle is that they provide opportunities for people like me to come in and display not just be on the receiving end of transformative acts of kindness, but actually to give. And so I started learning early on that if I wanted to keep all of the wonderful things that I had achieved, that I had helped with, that I had to give it back away. And so when I went into law school, I actually started up a program at the homeless shelter in Sacramento, teaching the homeless people law. Now, what kind of law would a homeless person need? Well, half of them are on parole. What are their rights? Half of them are trying to get out of the shelter. What are their landlord-tenant rights? Very practical things, right? What rights do they have? And so I was able to give back to a community from which I had risen out of. And I graduated there and passed the bar on my first try. And I went and worked at a premier Central California Valley, the Valley law firm, McCormick, Barstow, Shepard, Wade, Carruth, where I worked with just wonderful individuals, and I did litigation there. And again, was able to work with Major Larson, the Majors Larson here, on the Fresno Salvation Army Advisory Board. Now, it's interesting for me, right, having come from where I've come from, sat on the recipient side of things, and now able to be on the giving side of things. But I can tell you that the magic of both, right, is seeing the divine's hand at work, healing lives, and by healing lives, healing the community. And being a part of that cycle, is something very magical. It's a wonderful opportunity that each of us have to be a part of. Now, I recognize that I come at this from a little bit of a different angle. But let me tell you again, definitively, what path was I headed on until someone intervened and said, you are valuable, and we're willing to put time and treasure there. Now, I know from my own personal experience that I probably should have never even been a lawyer at a law firm. But I know for a fact that this guy would never be a banker, a corporate executive at one of the top 10 companies on the planet. I recognize that. And in fact, I was on the phone with the treasurer from Beezer Homes working on a very significant deal. And that's why I always give back. Just know that when you invest time and treasure into human beings, you have absolutely no idea the profound impact that you're having. And a lot of the times, I guarantee you the people that were on the advisory boards that helped the programs that I became a part of, they probably really had no idea of what was happening with that guy in 1994. And they'd have no idea, and they may not even know that that guy is now a corporate executive at a major financial services institution. They probably don't know that. And that's too bad. Because I would want them to be proud of the work that they have done. But as you sit here, just know that I'm not unique. I'm not unique. I'm not special. I'm just a guy that was met without discrimination at his point of need. And it happened. That transformative act of kindness gave me hope, and that hope shocked a cynical world and became dangerous. And I'm here where I am today only because people endeavored to bring that hope where I was at, no matter how ugly it was. Thank you.